We're starting a new chapter today. It's God's covenant with Israel. God is the sovereign Lord who redeems his sinful people. Now, I want you to remember that a covenant is an agreement between two or more people with certain requirements and promises. What were the parts of that covenant that God made with Abraham? You should say it very quickly. Land, seed, and blessing. Besides covenant, we also learned the word sovereign. Now remember, a sovereign is a person who rules over, and the fact that God is sovereign means that he is supreme. God created everything and is the ruler of all things. The last few lessons, we learned that God used trials to mature Joseph and Judah. Now, which one of Jacob's sons received a promise about ruling that would be fulfilled in Jesus Christ? It was Judah, wasn't it? What request did Jacob make about his burial that shows that he hadn't forgotten the promises made to Abraham? Remember that he asked to be buried back in Canaan, the land originally promised to Abraham. When Jacob had gone to Egypt during the famine, 70 people had gone with him. 400 years later, there were 600,000 men. That didn't include women and children. Jacob's family was huge. Remember the great nation, many descendants that were promised? God had blessed the children of Israel by helping them to multiply their children even in a foreign land. Now, they were in Egypt, and this was a great group of people. And that's where we're going to start our account today. Now, we finished with the book of Genesis, and we've moved into the book of Exodus. And you can fill in this page today as we talk about what happened, or you can wait until the end of the lesson. So this is what happened. The growth and prosperity of the people of Israel made the Egyptians afraid. Listen to these verses.
Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people,
Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Raamses.
The new king, the new Pharaoh, did not know Joseph. The Egyptians feared that the people of Israel would turn against them if there was a war. So what did they do? They made them their slaves. What happened then? Did being cruel to the Israelites keep them from growing? No, it caused them to multiply even more. Pharaoh was desperate to keep the Israelites in control. He decided to do something very evil. He instructed the Hebrew midwives, the ladies that helped to deliver babies, to kill all the baby boys at the time of their birth. But the midwives were obedient to God, not to Pharaoh. They did not kill the baby boys. Pharaoh then commanded that his men would kill the sons being born to the Hebrews. It was during this time that Moses was born. Do you remember what happened when Moses was a baby? Well, after he was born, his mother was able to hide him for 3 months. When she couldn't hide him anymore, she put him in a basket in the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found the baby Moses and took him as her own son, eventually bringing him up in the courts of Pharaoh. Now this verse tells what happened.
And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said,
Because I drew him out of the water.
Moses was saved from death, and he was brought up as a prince in the royal family. However, when Moses was a grown man, he did something that changed the path of his life. He saw the burdens of his people, and one day he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body. When Pharaoh heard about this, he wanted to kill Moses. So Moses ran away from Egypt, going to a place called Midian. And there Moses defended some shepherd girls and watered their sheep. The girl's father invited Moses to stay with the family, where Moses became a shepherd and eventually married and had children. What big changes Moses had, from a Hebrew baby in a basket on the Nile to growing up in Pharaoh's house to fleeing for his life and becoming a shepherd. The Bible tells us that after a while, Pharaoh died, and the children of Israel groaned and cried to the Lord because of their condition, their bondage. God heard their groaning and their cries, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Now, that verse really carries the idea that he heard their cries and turned his attention to them again. He never had forgotten his covenant. When Moses had left Egypt, he was 40 years old. Now, he's 80. Can you think of anyone who's 80 years old? Maybe your grandparents aren't even 80 years old. Think about the fact that Moses is really an older man when God calls him to do some very challenging things. This is what happened. When Moses was caring for the sheep, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a bush that was burning, but it was not burning up or being consumed. God called to him out of the bush and told Moses to take off his sandals because he was standing on holy ground. The Bible tells us that Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. When God spoke to Moses from the burning bush, he said that he had seen the affliction of his people. He was going to deliver his people out of the hand of the Egyptians, and he was going to bring them into a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey, meaning a prosperous land. God was going to use Moses to tell Pharaoh to let the people go from Egypt. He was going to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt to the promised land. Now imagine for a moment being Moses. Imagine how you would have felt. You were going to the most powerful person known, asking him to release all the people who were doing the work in the land. Would you be afraid? Well, Moses had some real hesitations and concerns. He was reluctant to accept this special calling from God. First, he said that he didn't feel that he was important enough.
And Moses said unto God,
Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt?
Next, Moses said that he didn't know how to explain who the Lord is that had called him.
And Moses said unto God,
Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them?
He also said that the people of Israel would not believe that Moses was called by God.
And Moses answered and said,
But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, The Lord hath not appeared unto thee.
And he said he could not speak well.
And Moses said unto the Lord,
O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue.
Finally, he said words that mean, send someone else. Well, God gave answer to each of Moses' complaints. God said that he would be with Moses. God said that his name is I am. I am is God's name for himself that shows his absolute authority and eternal existence. God will always be what he has always been, and he is a covenant-keeping God. God gave Moses signs to prove that he'd sent him. God assured Moses that he had made Moses' mouth and would help him speak and teach him what to say. Finally, God said that he would have Moses' brother Aaron speak for Moses to the people and to Pharaoh. Now, spending 400 years in Egypt might have made it hard for God's people to believe his promises, but God is always true to his word. Sometimes people think that the Bible was written too long ago to be trusted now. But throughout time, recorded history has supported events of the Bible. Christians trust the infallible book, the book with no mistakes, and that's the Bible. Matthew 24:35 says, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." Now let's look at Worktext page 79. Remember that Moses was raised in Egypt, and then he had to run, or he runs from Egypt. God calls Moses, and then at the burning bush, God assures Moses, he says, "I am the covenant keeper." God always keeps his promises. And now let's look at Worktext page 80. And here you have some fill in the blanks, but you've got this great word bank up here to help you. Let's look at the first one. It says the children of Abraham, Isaac, and what would this be? It would be Jacob. So you can write that in there, and you might want to cross that off. And number 6 and 7, you can complete those. Also, read them carefully. Now, since we're in a new chapter, it's time to start a new habit page. So let's look at your habit page. It gives you the scripture that you should read, and every time that you read one, check off the little done box, and this will help you to remember what we've been studying. I hope this habit is becoming your habit. Let's make sure that you are reading your Bible every single day. Since we're starting a new chapter, it's time to check in with Coach.
All right, team, bring it in, bring it in. Old Coach has a few words about what to expect next. I hope you're wearing your cleats, because you're gonna need to dig in to get some momentum. In this chapter, God demonstrates his sovereign care for his sinful people by redeeming them. Right on. Well, you're probably wondering, what does that look like, Coach? Well, you know about how Abraham was the father of Israel. Yep. Now, see how his family grew into a great nation in Egypt. Then we see how God, the Creator, uses his ultimate power over nature to devastate Egypt in order to glorify himself. Keep your eyes peeled for how all this work with the Israelites connects back to God's promise to Abraham from the last chapter. You'll learn a bit about God's faithfulness from when he called and equipped his reluctant prophet, Moses. There's a bit of a back and forth between God and Pharaoh, with Moses in the middle. And when Pharaoh tries to cheat, God makes it clear he isn't playing any games. And he's got 10 plagues to prove how serious he is about it. Yeah. This leads to Moses leading the people out of Egypt, which should lead the Israelites continued rejoicing for their deliverance, but instead leads to their grumbling about water and food. You're also going to learn about God's 10 commandments, the tabernacle and its symbolism, how the Israelites really sinned by making a golden calf, what happened when Moses sent spies out onto the land, why Moses lifts up a snake in the wilderness, and most importantly, how the Lord is sovereign and keeps his covenant promises. All right, take an aim. These Israelites were far from perfect, but God continued to love them. I think there's a lesson for all of us in there. Yeah. Dig into this chapter and see if you can't figure out what it might be. Right on, Coach. All right, hands in, go.